Hey, it's Dave here. Today I'm going to show you how to unlock one of the most powerful new features in Home Assistant, AI suggestions and AI tasks. We'll set up OpenAI, configure AI tasks, and then build a fun automation that scans your fridge and creates a list of items either sent straight to you as a notification or displays as a card on your dashboard. Now, this is a long video, and if you've already watched some of my earlier Home Assistant voice and OpenAI content, you may notice a few repeated steps. Feel free to skip ahead if that's the case, and to save you time, I've added 4 chapters in the descriptions so you can jump straight to the parts you need. Home Assistant suggestions and tasks is a relatively new feature released in 2025.8 update. And on Home Assistant docs, you'll find examples of how OpenAI can take on some of the heavy lifting and perform all kinds of magical tasks for you. For example, with object recognition, it's like Frigate in the cloud, but on steroids. Before we dive in, you need to make sure your Home Assistant core is updated to at least version 2025.8. So let me guide you through that first. The first thing you're going to need to do is confirm that you have Home Assistant Core 2025.8 or above in order to use AI suggestions or AI tasks. If you go to Settings, then scroll down and go to About, and you want to look at Core, and in this example, you can see it's 2025.6.3, so that isn't a late enough version. Now, if I go to Settings and then go to System, then go to General, there should be an AI suggestions section here which is missing. If I just navigate to another version of Home Assistant I've got running, that's what you want to see, this AI suggestions option. So we're going to update Home Assistant to enable that feature. Back onto my demo environment, go to Settings. Then from Updates, you should see Home Assistant Core as one of the options. You don't need to update Home Assistant operating system, but you might want to at the same time. So we're going to click on Home Assistant Core. And as mentioned earlier, you can see I've got 2025.6.3, which isn't new enough. And there's already an update for 2025 9.1. I've already made a recent backup, so I'm just going to leave that unchecked so it doesn't make a backup before I do the updates. And now I'm just going to select Update. Once that's updated, we're going to go back into Settings. Then go to System, then go to General, and now you can see we've got AI suggestions as an option. Now, while this is showing, if I click on the drop-down menu, at the moment it's going to say no matching entities found. This is because we haven't installed or integrated any large language models in Home Assistant. In this example, I'm going to be using OpenAI, and there's 4 steps I need to do for it to show as an available AI task in that drop-down menu. I'm going to log on to the OpenAI portal and create an API key. Then I'm going to go back into Home Assistant and install the OpenAI integration. And then from the OpenAI integration, I'm going to add a service which is going to ask for the API key I would have created. And then I'm going to add an AI task, which will then make it appear as one of the options for this drop-down menu. Now we're going to head over to the OpenAI platform page, which is this one here. Then you're going to sign in with one of your accounts. I'm just going to log in with Google. I'm going to start off by creating a new project and just give it a name that's relatable to what you're using it for. I'm just going to call it Home Assistant Demo. And then click Create. Now, if you navigate to Settings, now before we create the API key, we need to make sure we actually have credits available for those tokens to be used. Now, if you have run out of credits, what you will find is under Settings, and if you go to System and then go to Logs, from Home Assistant Core, if you do a search for OpenAI, you're going to get some sort of error message. In this example, I've just disabled access to the API key, just so that you can see an OpenAI error is showing. If you have run out of billing credits, it's going to say something along the lines of you've run out of tokens, and it's just going to give you a warning. So if you go over to billing first, I've already got some money in my credit balance, but if you don't, you'll want to hit Add to Credit Balance, type in a number, and then click Continue. Now there's another optional setting you can have, which is Enable Auto Recharge. If you click into that, you can then set a limit so when your credit goes below X amount of money, it's automatically going to top it up to a certain value. And you can also set the maximum amount it will top up per month. Personally, I don't actually use that. I just leave it as it is. But what I will do is if you go under limits here, you can actually create a budget and an alert where from here I can say when the budget goes below a certain amount of money, I would then put in my email address here and then get it to send me a message, and then I'll just top it up when I want to. I just prefer that method opposed to the risk of overrunning and paying an excessive bill that I wasn't expecting. While I'm at the limits section, if I scroll down, it actually gives you a list of all the available models. And if I just click Show All Models, I can scroll down and see even more. In this demonstration, I'm actually going to be using ChatGPT 5 Mini. And if I just scroll and find that, it's this one here. Now that we've added some money and we've looked at the limits, we're going to create the API key. So if you select Create New Secret Key, then just give it a name. I'm just going to call it Home Assistant Demo, and I'll just make it so it appears also in the project Home Assistant Demo. I'll leave the settings as they are, and then select Create Secret Key. Now, just to warn you, it's only going to show you this key once. So you're going to want to copy and save it somewhere securely, because if you lose it, you're then going to have to create another new key. It's not the end of the world, because you'll just create a new key, and then from Home Assistant, when you add the service, you just specify the new key again. So I'm going to copy that and just save it somewhere secure. And now I can click Done. And you'll see that is the Home Assistant API key I've created for Home Assistant Demo. Now there's another setting you need to do to verify your organization. If you fail to do this and you start using the OpenAI tasks, you might get something like these errors showing here, where it's saying your organization must be verified to stream this model, and then it links you to the platform web page. And you may have also, this error message comes straight after. So we're just going to tidy this up. Back onto the portal, if you go to General, and then you should have this option here, Verify Organization. Click on that. And I'm just going to go through Start ID Check. Check the box I consent to processing of my biometric information. Begin verifying. Now I'm going to scan that QR code from my mobile phone. Otherwise, you can click Send Email. Now, the rest of these steps are essentially just opening my mobile phone, taking photos of government documentation, along with a photograph of myself to prove my identity, which I'm obviously not going to show on this video. Now, I suspect this is probably something that's only applicable if you live in the UK, because there has been some recent changes where certain websites, you have to verify your identity in order to access them. And this might be something along those rules when using OpenAI. So you may find that you don't actually need to do this if you live outside the UK, but don't quote me on that. I'm just assuming, and I could be wrong in what I'm saying. So I've now finished those verification steps. I'm just going to go back into platform OpenAI portal and see if it's going to show me anything. I'm just going to click Save. Oh, that's better. Once I clicked out and back in, I can now see organization is verified. So I shouldn't be getting an error code. I do have my suspicion it's something to do with being in the UK. I could be wrong on that. But if you do find yourself with an error message like this in your logs, that's what you need to do in order to fix it. Now that we've created the API key, we're going to go back into Home Assistant and install the OpenAI integration. So from Home Assistant, if you go to Settings, then go to Devices and Services, and if you select Add Integration, search for OpenAI, click on that. This is the part where it's going to ask for that key. So I'm just going to paste that in and select Submit. And you can pretty much just leave those as default settings. If you want, you can give it an area. I'm just going to leave that as it is and click Skip and Finish. And now you can see the OpenAI integration has been installed. Now you may have noticed it appears to have already added the OpenAI task, which is here, and it's also added OpenAI Conversation. I'm not going to cover OpenAI Conversation because I've already done a video previously, and what we're focusing on is the OpenAI AI task. If for some reason none of these are here, it may be that you need to add the service, which is the part where you add the API key. So you would select Add Service, and then you'd put in that key. Because I've already done it, it's got these settings here. And to add the AI task, you'd click that, Add AI Task, and then go through a wizard. Now we're just going to configure the existing one. So if you click on the Settings cog, and what I'm going to want to do is uncheck Recommended Model Settings, because at the moment it's going to default to GPT-4o Mini. So if you uncheck that and do Submit, now you're going to get a list of options. This is a part where you can specify the model, and I'm going to use GPT-5 Mini. So I'm just going to update that now. Then you've got maximum amount of tokens in a response. It defaults to 3,000. I'm just going to leave it as it is. Now for these two settings here, top P and temperature P, I'm just going to head over to the official documentation where it actually gives you an answer as to what they are. So you can see you've got temperature and top P. Temperature is basically creativity. The higher the value you set, the more random it will appear. And for top P, the higher the value you set, the more likely words it will use. and the lower the value you set, it will pick more less likely words. So as an overview, for top P, the higher the value you set, it becomes less random, and the lower the value you set, it becomes more random. But with temperature, the higher the value you set, it's more random, and the lower the value you set, it's less random. If you want a more detailed explanation, there's a couple of really good posts I've found. If I just start off with this one here. Now, there's a person here called Miguel de la Vega, and he's done a really good job of explaining the difference between temperature and top P. I'll link this in the description in case you want to have a read through. And there's another person in the community forums called Ruv, who has also done a spectacular job of explaining the difference. And he's also gone through the effort of actually putting a table together. So you may want to have a read through that at the same time. Back into Home Assistant, I'm just going to leave those settings as they are, and I'm going to click Submit. Okay, future Dave here. Now, whatever you do, just leave top P and temperature both as 1. Now, this might be something to do with when using ChatGPT 5 Mini, but if I change those settings to anything other than 1 and 1, the AI suggest feature doesn't seem to work. I'm just going to sabotage it and show you exactly what happens. So if I just change that to this and then just leave the rest as they are, now when I go into an automation I'm creating and I'm pressing the suggest button, I'm consistently getting this error message. It doesn't matter how many times I press, it will constantly fail. And if I just go into the logs of another screen I've got open earlier, you're going to get these two messages. This one here that doesn't really give you much explanation. And there's one just before, it will say here, error code 401, you have insufficient permissions for this operation. I can't explain why this is happening other than if I change this setting here and I put this back so they're both on 1, now I'm going to save it. And if I go back to the automation button, now when I press suggest, it's starting to work. So there's something funny about the temperature and top P when you're wanting to use the suggestion feature. Just make sure both of those are set to 1. Otherwise, at the moment for me, it seems to be generating an error message. Now for code interpreter, I'm actually going to leave that unchecked. It's basically a tool that allows Assistant to write and execute Python in a controlled environment, and it can process various files like CSV, PDF, and JSON to solve complex math or coding problems, and then generate outputs such as graphs or data files. There's a bit more information if I just head over to this page here, where you can read up in terms of what the code interpreter is actually doing. And then you've got these two settings, reasoning effort. This controls the thinking model before generating the final response. So the lower you set it, the faster and more simple answers it's going to give you. The higher you set it, it's going to spend more time thinking before answering. But obviously this will take more time to respond. And then you've got verbosity. This is the length of the answer it's going to give you. So if you set it to low, it's going to give you a short and concise response. And if you set it to high, it's going to give you a very detailed and more expansive explanation. I'm just going to leave those both as default and then click submit and then click close. And now I just need to go to the Home Assistant settings and add that AI task for AI Assist. So if I go to settings, then look for system, go to general. Now when I scroll down, you'll see if I click on this drop down menu, we've now got OpenAI task, which is the one we've just created. And I'm now going to click save. Now I'm going to create an example automation and show you the AI suggest feature, which can be helpful in terms of what name to call your automation and what to go in the description section. Now I have switched over to my Home Assistant Live environment just because I've got more devices and entities to play with. But in terms of the Home Assistant core version, it is exactly the same. Now, if you go to Settings, then go to Automations and Scenes, select Create Automation, select Create New Automation, and I'm just going to very quickly create an example of when I turn this light on. After this time, it's going to turn another light off, something very boring. So I'm going to click on Add Trigger, and I'm just going to find Entity, State, and I'm just going to look for the kitchen lights. And it'll be when it turns on. Then I'm just going to quickly add a condition. So it would be time, and it'll be after 8 o'clock. Then I'm going to select Then Do, and I'm just going to make it turn the bedroom light off. So I go to Entity, find the bedroom lights, and now I'm going to click Save, and you'll see you've got this new feature here called Suggest. However, it is a bit random. Sometimes it's very good. A lot of the times, I'm not really that impressed with it. So I'm going to click Suggest, and what should happen, and I say the word should because it doesn't always happen, it will automatically give you a name and also add something in the description field. So let's just see what happens. So you can see there it's given it a name, kitchen switch on, turn kitchen light off after 8 o'clock. Now that isn't actually what this automation is doing. I've made it so that if I turn the kitchen light off after 8 o'clock, I want it to turn the bedroom light off. For some reason here, it's came up with a description that's actually wrong. I'm just going to click Suggest again and see if it's able to think of anything better. So you can see here it's got kitchen switch, turn off light after 8 o'clock. And then it's got a description, when kitchen son-off switch is turned on after 8 o'clock, turn off the son-off kitchen light to avoid accidental lighting. Again, that's completely wrong. It almost got it right. I was hoping it's going to say turn off bedroom lights. I'm not really that impressed with this at the moment. It might well be that ChatGPT 5 Mini, maybe it's not that great for this feature, or maybe it's just an update I've got to wait for. I partly think it's to do with the temperature and the top P, because if they're set to random, maybe it doesn't give you as a definitive, straight to the point answer. But I can't change those features. I've tried changing reasoning effort to a higher setting and also changing verbosity to a higher setting, but that doesn't seem to make any difference. So at the moment, while this is a cool feature, it gives you a name, it gives you a description, it doesn't seem to be that accurate, because you can clearly see here on the when section, it's when kitchen light changes to on. Here it's got when kitchen light turns off after 8 o'clock, which isn't true. And it's then got here, then do turn off on bedroom. So it's not actually telling me the correct information. It'd be interesting if those of you who have played with this too, whether you've had the same problem where the description is a bit random, and in this case, it actually seems to be wrong. We're going to start off by creating a fake camera, but before we do that, we need to download an image of my fridge and then save it into your Home Assistant server. If you go into File Editor and then click Browse File System, and you're going to look for a folder called www, which is this one here. And you're going to want to create a folder called fridge, and it must be spelt all lowercase. So if you click on the new folder button, then type in fridge, and then click OK. I've already done this, so I'm going to click cancel. Once that folder exists, you're then going to browse to it. And this is the part where you upload that file. So you'll click upload file. Then you're going to browse to the path and upload the fridge-photo.jpg and then click OK. I've already done it earlier, which is this photo, and I'm just going to quickly click on it to show you what it looks like. So it's basically just a sample photo of my fridge with some random items. I will be saving this photo into GitHub in case you want to follow along and use the exact same photos. And I've also included 6 different variants of my fridge with different items so you can play around and confirm that the object recognition is actually working. Now that you've uploaded that image, we're going to create the fake camera. If you go to Settings, then go to Devices and Services, click Add Integration, and do a search for local file. And it's this one you want. I'm just going to leave the name as it is. And for the path, assuming you're following along, it wants to be /config/www/fridge/fridge-photo.jpg, and make sure all of that is lowercase. Now you're going to click Submit and then click Finish. And you should now see you have local file integrated and it's showing one entity. I'm just going to click on that. And here you can see the photo of my fridge. And if you select the settings icon, you'll see it's known as camera.local_file. Make note of that because you will need it later when we start adding cards to Home Assistant. Now we're going to create an automation which will analyze that image and list the contents of the fridge. If you go to Settings, then go to Automations and Scenes, click Create Automation, select Create New Automation, and if you go to these 3 dots and do Edit in YAML, I'm just going to paste this example code which I will be sharing. The name for the automation will be What's in Fridge, and the action will be AI task generate data. I've given it some instructions where it's basically just analyzing the photo, and I want it to give me a compact list where it just bullet points the items, and I don't want it to categorize them because it will end up just being too much information and it will look messy. As I scroll down a bit further, you'll see this part here where it's got entity ID AI task.OpenAI task. This is going to be the AI task that you have set up. If I just go on to another window and I can explain it a bit better. So if I go to Settings, go to Devices and Services, do a search for OpenAI. And if I click on Entities, you'll see here you've got OpenAI task. Then I'm going to click on Settings, and that will give you the entity ID of your AI task. So that's the one that you'll want to be using. Back into here, the next part is you're also going to need to reference the photo. And if you followed along and you've called your camera local file, it should already be exactly as it is. I'm just going to go into the user interface section because it's easier to explain. So if you click on these three dots and select Edit in Visual Editor, and you'll see this section here where it's got Perform Action, AI Task, Generate Data. You'll notice there's an attachment section. If you click on that, and what you'll want to be doing is selecting the local file, which is the fake webcam we have made. I've already selected that, so I don't need to click on it. Okay, back into the YAML. If I just go down a little bit further, what this is going to do is send a notification, which is this part here, and that's going to appear in this notifications section in Home Assistant. And I've selected notify.notify, which is also going to be a notification on your phone. Now, if you wanted to, you could make it notify.mobile, which is this example command here, and that allows you to make that notification specific to your actual mobile phone. So it'd be notify.mobile app, and then it's whatever your phone is called here. But just to make it easier, I've left it as notify.notify because that way you haven't got to change the code and it will just work automatically. Now we're going to click Save, and then just leave the name exactly as it is. Click Rename. And now we're just going to come out of that automation. And what we're going to do is click on this button here, and we're just going to run the action. I'm just going to quickly zoom out before I do that, and just keep your eyes on this notification area as I run it. It will take about 20 seconds, and we should get a notifications on there. And we're also going to get a notifications on the mobile phone at the same time. So you can see there we've got the notification, and it's showing you fridge contents, and that's what it has listed. Now, while this is pretty cool that it's able to analyze an image, give you a list of the items in the fridge, put it in the notifications, or send it as a notification to your mobile phone, what would be even more cool is if you can have a card on your dashboard that has a photograph of the fridge, and when you run this automation, it will also contain a list and detail those items at the same time. That's what I'm going to show you how to do now. Now, there's two ways to achieve what I've just demonstrated. The quick and the easy way is to create an input text file and then edit the automation so the response from the AI task is then added to the input text, and then you will create a card which will show a feed of the camera, and it will get the text from the input text. But there is a 255 character limitation with input text. So the other method, which is a little bit more complicated, is by exporting the contents into a Markdown file and then re-importing it back from a sensor, which I will show you in the second example. To create an input text, if you go to Settings, go to Devices and Services, then click on Helpers, select Create Helper, and if you do a search for text, select text, and we're going to give it the name fridge_contents. And while I'm at it, I'm going to give it the fridge icon. And you must expand advanced settings and set the maximum length to 255. If you forget to do this, it will only be set to 100, and there's a good chance that the response the AI task will give you will be greater than 100 characters, and the automation isn't going to update the input text file, and you'll be pulling your hair wondering why it's not working. And if it isn't updating, there's a good chance you probably forgot to make this setting, something I did 5 minutes ago while filming this video. Now we're going to select Create, and I'm just going to search for that helper. which you can see is here, fridge contents. And if I click on settings, you've got the entity ID, which is input_text.fridge_contents. Now we're going to go back into the automation. So go to settings, automations and scenes. Go to the one we just made. Select those three dots and choose edit in YAML. And then go right the way to the bottom. I'm just going to paste this bit of code in, which is this part here. And this is going to do three things. You've got the action here, which is referencing that input text we've just made. And it's going to take the response from the AI task and add it to the input text. Then we're going to have a 1 second delay. And then we're going to update the entities, which is just the camera at the moment. Now let's click Save. We can come out of our automation. And now we're going to run the automation and confirm that the input text is updating. Just before I do that, I'm going to check the value on another tab. So I'm going to go to Developer Tools. Go to states. That's the one we want. And you can see at the moment, it's got state unknown. And that's expected because the state is updated when the automation runs. Now we're going to go back into the automation. And we're just going to run all the actions. And then quickly go back into states. It will take about 10 seconds. Okay, it's worked straight away. So there you can see now the state is showing a list of the items in the fridge. So we know the automation is successfully updating the input text. Now the next step is to create a card, but I do use a custom card called HTML Ginger2 template card, which you can find from the Hacks Home Assistant community store. If you haven't got Hacks installed in your Home Assistant environment, I have made a video earlier and I will link in the description how to do that. Now from the search field, if you type in HTML Ginger2 template card, or probably if you just type in HTML, it should be one of the first responses. This is the one that you're going to need to install. Once you've installed that, then you can go ahead and create the card. I'm just going to come out of this because I've already got it installed. So from my dashboard, I'm going to click Edit Dashboard. In this particular example, I've actually got Section View. I'm going to click that plus icon and I'm going to scroll all the way down and look for Manual. And I'm just going to paste this code in. Now, if you are following along, there is a good chance you can literally just paste this code in and it will work. If not, there's a few things you're going to need to change. There's a bit here where it's got entity ID, and that is the name of your automation. There's also the input text, which is this part here, which we created earlier. And if I just scroll down a bit further, you'll see here, there's a bit where it also references the automation, and it's got a bit here where it references the automation in terms of when it was last triggered. The reason it references automation a few times is because I've actually got a refresh button, or if you click on the image, that will also refresh the automation. I'm just going to zoom out and show you how it looks. So if I click Done, and then just click Done again, you'll see here it's got last updated. What that actually means is it's when the automation was last updated. Now at the moment, the image itself, I'm just using a fake camera essentially. I've just got 6 different pictures of my fridge, and as I overwrite one of the photos, this will change immediately, but you have to press the refresh button for that list or the automation to run. The reason I don't want it to go instantly is because every time the automation runs, it's going to ChatGPT and it's using some tokens. Eventually, what I will do is have a series of cameras inside the fridge. And what's going to happen is there'll be another automation so that when the fridge door opens or when the fridge door closes, it's going to turn on a light in the fridge, take a photograph, and then it will run this automation to automatically update the content here. So I'm just going to quickly overwrite one of those files where the camera is, just to show that it does work. So at the moment, you can see some Diet Coke on the shelf on the left. I'm just going to overwrite it and it should change to some cans of Heineken, which you can see it's done. So that's pretty much immediate. Now I'm going to press the refresh button and that will take probably about 30 seconds to update because it's got to run the automation, send the photo to ChatGPT. That's going to send a response back. Okay, and there you can see, and now it's showing 2 cans of Heineken. So that has worked. Now I'm going to show you how to get over the 255 character limits with input text by writing a shell command that's going to create a Markdown file. And then we're also going to write a command line, which is going to read the Markdown file. Once we've done those 2 steps, we can then create a card, which is going to be very similar to the one I demonstrated earlier. But instead of it referencing the data from the input text, it's going to reference the data from a sensor. If you go into File Editor, now you're going to be writing a shell command and a command line. Because I've split my configuration.yaml, I won't be writing it directly in here. However, if you haven't split it, and it just happens that you don't have any shell commands or command lines, I'm just going to quickly paste and show you what it would actually look like if it was directly in here. It's going to look something like this. You've got a shell command, and this is basically going to create the fridge_contents MD file. Now, assuming you've been following along and you've already made the fridge file from within your www folder, you can pretty much just copy and paste this code and it should work. Then you've got the command line underneath, which is essentially doing the opposite. It's reading the fridge_contents.md file, which would have been created from the automation, which is this code here. Again, it's referencing the same path. It's going to your www folder fridge. So as long as you've created that folder structure and you've made it all in lowercase, it should just work. I'm just going to delete that because I've split my configuration.yaml. And I'm just going to quickly show you there's a few subtle differences of how it looks if you have split it. So I'm just going to go into browser. Then I'm going to go to the config folder. I'm going to look for the shell command first, which is this one here. And that's the file. And the subtle difference is it hasn't got shell command at the top because it would normally look like that. But instead, this part is missing and then the indentations is moved to the left. Now I'm going to come out of that and go to the command line. Which is here. And again, you can see it just starts with sensor, so it doesn't have command line at the beginning. So instead of it looking like that, this bit's taken off, everything else 2 indentations to the left. Now, with the command line, you can go into developer tools and restart it. I'm just going to close that because I don't need to save it. So you'd go to developer tools, go to YAML, and you'll notice you can restart the command line entities, but there doesn't seem to be an option to restart the shell command. So you've got no choice but to just check your configuration.yaml's good, and then just give Home Assistant a restart. Once you've restarted Home Assistant, I would go into States, and we're just going to confirm this new sensor exists, and it should be called sensor.read_fridgemd. So I'm just going to do a search for that. And you can see that's looking good and it exists. So you want to check that works just before we go into editing the automation. Now we're going to go into the automation, go to settings, automations and scenes, find that one we've made earlier, click on those dots and select edit in YAML. Now I'm just going to remove the entries where it uses the input text because we don't actually need that now. That's now going to be replaced with this action, which is going to write a Markdown file. And we're also going to update an extra entity. So I'm just going to add this in as well. So it's going to update the camera file, and it's also going to update the sensor read fridge Markdown file. All of this code will be shared, so you don't need to write it down. I'll save it on GitHub. Now we're going to save that. And now we can make arc. Now, before we make this card, in case you did skip across, I just want to remind you, I do use a custom HTML card from Hacks. So if you go into Hacks and just do a search for HTML, it's this one here I'm using, which is this Lovelace HTML Ginger 2 template card. If you don't install that, the card isn't going to work. And if you don't know how to install Hacks, I've already made a video earlier, which I will link in the description. Okay, so if we now go into Edit Dashboard, click the plus icon, and we're going to scroll down, look for Manual. These steps are going to be almost identical if you watched the part earlier. And we're just going to paste this code in. The main difference, if I just expand this, is it's now going to be referencing sensor.read_fridge_md instead of the input text. Some of the code will also look a little bit different. But in theory, if you follow along and you copy and paste it, it should work. The only things you might need to change is the name of the automation, which is this one here. Assuming you've given a sensor the same name, that should be fine. And there's a couple bits here where it references the automation twice. And this is the part where it does automation last triggered. I'm just going to zoom out. Just going to click done to save that. And if I just click done, and the reason it references the automation multiple times is you can click on this here to refresh the automation, or you can click here to refresh the automation. And you can see at the moment it's listing some items. It says Diet Coke. I'm just going to press refresh and see what happens, because that should change. It can take about 20 seconds before it works. Yeah, and you can see now it's showing Heineken 2 cans, which are these items here. So at the moment, it doesn't update automatically. For now, I've just made a manual refresh button, because if I was to set it to update every minute or 30 seconds to run this automation, it's going to start eating into my tokens. At some point in the future, I will make a door sensor so that when a door opens and closes, it's going to take a photo automatically for me and then update the automation. Where in this current example, I've just manually taken some photos for you just so you can see it working. Now, if you did want to have a little play around with the sample photos, I'm just going to open up a Samba share. This is another add-in you might want. If you go to settings, go to add-ons. This is quite a useful add-on because you can browse to the path of your Home Assistant, which I'm about to do now. So I've got one folder here, which is Home Assistant. And you can see that is the image of the essentially fake webcam. If I just double click on it, you can see it's got those 2 Heineken cans and then some milk and some fruit. I'm just going to close that. And I'm just going to go onto this tab, and we're just going to find an example photo. Yeah, you can see that's got Diet Coke. So we're just going to copy that. What we're going to do is overwrite this photo. Just before I do that, I want to go back onto the dashboard. So you can see at the moment it's got those beer cans. I'm just going to quickly overwrite that file. You should see this image change in a second. Yep, so you can now see it's got the Diet Coke. So that's instant, but then I just got to press refresh, wait about 20, 30 seconds, and then that Heineken should say Coke, or somewhere on that list it's going to say Coke and some other items. But in case you do want to play around just to prove this concept is working, I'll put all the videos on my GitHub. Yeah, you can see now it says Diet Coke, and it's got in brackets 2 because it knows there's 2 there. If you do use this, or if you find that there is a better way you have been using this sort of object recognition or dashboard display, it'd be interesting to see how you've been doing this, because I couldn't find many posts on using the AI tasks and have it automatically list it on your dashboard, probably because it's only about 2 months old. So post in the comments if you do have any feedback on how you've been doing this or if this works for you. And that's it. AI suggestions and tasks up and running in Home Assistant. If you've learned something new today, hit like and subscribe to be notified when more content is released. Feel free to drop any questions in the comments section or join my Discord channel to discuss any issues. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.